Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
When we first moved into our house, I thought we were in for a smooth ride. The place seemed perfect. Quiet neighborhood, decent neighbors, and not a single problem on the horizon. My husband and I used a VA loan to get the home, and everything seemed to check out. We even had a signed letter from the HOA stating that the house was free and clear of violations. It felt like we'd finally found a home to settle into, a real sanctuary after all the hard work we'd put in. We were ready for some peace and quiet. 3 months later, that peace was shattered. I still remember the day we got that letter in the mail. I didn't think much of it at first, just another HOA notice, probably something about landscaping or a reminder to bring in the trash bins. But as I opened it and read the words, my stomach dropped. Notice of violation was written in bold letters across the top. It claimed that our addition to the driveway wasn't approved by the HOA. I stared at the letter in disbelief, feeling like I was in some kind of twilight zone. We hadn't added a single thing to that house, let alone the driveway. What the hell was this about? Naturally, my first thought was that there must have been some kind of mistake. Maybe the HOA had mixed up our house with someone else's. So, I called them up, fully expecting it to be cleared up in a matter of minutes. But of course, that's not how things went. The person on the other end of the line wasn't exactly helpful. They insisted that there was an unapproved addition to the driveway that had violated HOA guidelines. I repeated, for what felt like the millionth time, that we hadn't done any construction since moving in. We had barely even unpacked all our boxes, let alone hired a contractor to mess with the driveway. But they kept telling me the same thing. The addition was in violation, and we needed to fix it or face fines. At this point, I started getting curious. What addition were they talking about? I had never seen anything that seemed out of place on our property. So, I went outside and inspected the driveway like it was some kind of crime scene. And then I saw it, a narrow strip of brick, maybe 8 inches wide, running alongside the driveway. 8 inches of brick. That's what they were making all this fuss about. That's when the real nightmare started to unravel. I did some digging and discovered that the previous owner of the house had been battling the HOA for years over this so-called addition. Apparently, he'd put in these walkways on either side of the driveway without getting proper approval, and the HOA had been on his case ever since. But here's the kicker. The HOA had signed off on the sale of the house, issuing a paid assessment letter stating that there were no violations. No violations. They had lied, or at the very least, covered it up long enough to get the sale through. And now, we were left holding the bag for something we didn't even do. My husband was furious, and I was right there with him. How could they let us buy this house, sign all the paperwork, and move in, only to turn around and slap us with a violation for something that happened years before we ever set foot on the property? It felt like we were being set up from the beginning. I tried calling the HOA again, this time with more pointed questions. Why had they issued the letter saying the property was clear? Why were they coming after us instead of the previous owner, who had done the work? And most importantly, what were we supposed to do now? Their response was as infuriating as it was vague. They couldn't give me a straight answer, only that we were now responsible for fixing the problem. Oh, and by the way, we'd be facing fines if we didn't address it soon. Because of course we would. By then, we realized we weren't just dealing with an incompetent HOA. There was something more deliberate behind their actions. They knew exactly what they were doing. The company that managed our HOA was shocked that the house had ever been allowed to be sold with this ongoing issue. They told us they had put a freeze on the fines while we tried to figure things out. But here's where it got even worse. The management company wasn't the one pushing this. It was our own HOA board, a group of residents who seemed hell-bent on making an example out of us. They weren't interested in finding a fair resolution or even acknowledging their mistake in letting the house sell. No, they wanted to make sure we paid for what the previous owner had done. It's one thing to deal with a frustrating bureaucracy, but it's another to deal with people who are out to get you. We started hearing from other neighbors who had similar stories, people who had been hit with random violations for things they didn't even know were against the rules. The HOA was on a rampage, trying to clean up after years of mismanagement, and they were taking it out on anyone they could. It didn't matter that we were new to the neighborhood. It didn't matter that we had nothing to do with the driveway addition. They had a vendetta, and we were in their crosshairs. At this point, we had no choice but to lawyer up. We weren't going to sit back and let them bully us into paying for something we didn't do. Our lawyer dug deeper into the situation, and it became clear that this was no simple misunderstanding. The HOA board had a long history of selective enforcement, going after certain homeowners while turning a blind eye to others. And now, they had decided to take all their pent-up anger about past residents and dump it on us. The board was relentless. Even after the management company froze the fines, the board continued to push for us to remove the brick. 8 inches of brick, less than a foot wide, barely noticeable unless you were specifically looking for it. And yet, they acted like it was the crime of the century. They sent us letter after letter, warning us of further action if we didn't comply. It was like they had nothing better to do than harass us over this tiny strip of brick. We spoke to a few different law firms, trying to figure out our options. The advice was always the same. Litigation would be long and expensive, with no guarantee of a favorable outcome. The previous owner, the one who had caused all this, was nowhere to be found. He had washed his hands of the situation the moment he sold the house, and we were left to deal with the mess. Even if we won in court, we'd still be stuck in a years-long legal battle, racking up bills we couldn't afford, all over a few feet of walkway that didn't even affect anyone's property. The worst part, we didn't even know if we could win. The HOA had more money, more time, and more resources than we did. They could drag this out for as long as they wanted, knowing we'd eventually have to cave just to avoid bankruptcy. The stress was unbearable. My husband and I spent countless nights going over the options, trying to figure out what to do next. Every time we thought we had a plan, something else would come up. A new letter, a new threat, another twist in the never-ending saga. We started thinking about selling the house. It wasn't what we wanted to do. We had only just moved in, and this was supposed to be our home. But how could we stay here, knowing that the HOA was determined to make our lives miserable? How could we invest any more time, money, or energy into a place that had turned into a living nightmare? I wish I could say that we found some miraculous solution, that we stood up to the HOA and came out victorious. But that's not how this kind of thing goes. In the end, we're still here, still fighting, still dealing with their constant harassment. The bricks are still there, too, unmoved, unapproved, and apparently the single most important issue facing our entire neighborhood. I don't know how this will all end, but one thing is clear. This HOA has made it their mission to take out all their frustrations from the past on us. All because of some bricks. Bricks we didn't even put there. We're caught in the middle of a battle we never signed up for, paying for the sins of someone else's fight, with no end in sight. All I wanted was a quiet home, a place to settle down. Instead, we've got fines, threats, and a board of neighbors that seems hell-bent on making us regret ever moving here. And let me tell you, they're doing a pretty good job of it. The HOA signed paperwork that said the house was not violating any of its guidelines. Our HOA is headed by some corporation, and the point of contact for them was shocked that the house was ever allowed to be sold and had put a freeze on any fines. This right here is what myself and the courts like to call their problem. They signed off on it. They can't retroactively fine you and say it's violating HOA rules now. Unfortunately, you only have 2 options. Avoid a court case and bow to the HOA's whims. I do not suggest this option. Or take it to court and watch your lawyer and judge beat the living snot out of the HOA's lawyer and board of directors. It's more costly and will be a headache, but I highly suggest you pick this option. It will save you a ton of hassle in the long run. My mom had this issue. It started with the lawn being 1 inch above regulation when her lawnmower had broken. She had my uncle come by and cut it. Then got a notice about curtains being the wrong color seen from the street. She didn't have any curtains. She had blinds and they were white, just as CC&R said they had to be. So she wrote a letter back asking for a photo of the alleged window. It was done after that. They came back with issue after issue, all essentially fabricated, as none of the citations were never backed with evidence. Even cited her for things that they were responsible for, like the roof being in disrepair. It was a townhouse building. The roof was the same roof for 6-row units. Anyways, she later found out it was board member behind it all. It was some guy that had asked her out at the supermarket. She turned him down. Turned out he was a neighbor around the way. She didn't know that at the supermarket meeting, not that that would change her response to him, she got creeper vibes. He admitted that he was mad that she would call her boyfriend to mow the lawn instead of a neighbor like him. Creeper literally confused my uncle as her boyfriend and went scorched earth. I'd like to suggest that, if they have not already done so, OP first attempt a friendly communication with the HOA board on this matter, and simply lay out the facts. They were unaware of this conflict. Can the board graciously agree to grandfather this item and put it aside so that OP can get on with enjoying their first new home? Sure, the board might be jerks about it, but there's very little downside to attempting a friendly discussion that might make the matter go away quickly and easily. I'll mention that if the board is poked at anyone, it's not OP. It's the previous owner, who somehow managed to escape their wrath, and also possibly the management company, who may have dropped the ball during the sale. I recently stepped down from serving 3 years on my HOA board, and that experience is why I will often suggest that people attempt to go friendly first if their HOA singles them out for any issue. One of the many reasons that HOAs suck so badly is that they make a lot of mistakes.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.